Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. The final exam. Preliminary rounds. The third exam room was an enormous, dimly lit hall with high ceilings and cold, stone walls that echoed the faintest sounds. It had a brutal, utilitarian feel, as though the space was designed purely for combat. In the center of the room lay a large, rectangular arena, its floor made of hard, cracked stone, worn down by countless battles fought here over the years. At the far end of the chamber, a massive stone carving of a shinobi hand sign stood as a monumental symbol of the village's traditions and the trials the contestants would soon face. This emblem loomed over the room, a constant reminder of the weight of the Chunin exams. Balconies lined the sides of the room, where exam proctors, important figures, and the other contestants could stand and observe the matches below. The silence was thick, broken only by the subtle clinking of shinobi gear and the quiet murmurs of the genin, who were all acutely aware that this RO was where their skills would truly be put to the test. The 21 genin who had survived the brutal forest of death stood lined up in the center of the third exam room, the gravity of their accomplishment beginning to sink in. These were the ones who had proven themselves capable in the second exam, the ones strong and resourceful enough to make it through the deadly trials of the forest. Naruto, standing at the front of his team's line, stole a glance back at Sasuke. His teammate had been unusually quiet since their ordeal, grimacing and clutching at his neck every so often. We made it through the forest of death, Naruto thought, recalling the events that led them to this moment. All things considered, we probably would have done well, if we hadn't run into that incredibly powerful shinobi. Forest of Death flashback. Naruto's thoughts wandered back to the beginning of the exam. After the initial instructions were given, they had learned that the test involved collecting both a heaven and earth scroll from opposing teams. We get one, and we have to fight for the other, Naruto recalled. As soon as they entered the forest, Sasuke had suggested using clones to scout ahead. Naruto had grumbled in response, irritated that Sasuke had spoiled his plan. I was gonna do that anyway. You ruined the surprise, he muttered, but still summoned a dozen shadow clones and had them spread out to search for other teams. Team 7 moved cautiously through the dense foliage, inching closer to the tower, when Naruto excused himself for a bathroom break. Walking a short distance away from his teammates, he noticed the telltale rustling of bushes nearby. Trusting his instincts, he quickly used his shadow clone transformation technique, an increasingly familiar trick, and pretended to take a leak. Suddenly, an enemy genin leapt from the bushes in an attempted ambush, but Naruto's clone had anticipated the attack and countered it perfectly. He sent a clone to retrieve Sasuke and Sakura. Together, they managed to take down the enemy genin, but to their disappointment, he didn't have the scroll they needed. Sakura reasoned that he had probably been sent ahead to scout an ambush solo, hoping to steal their scroll, but Naruto was still on high alert. Soon after, one of his scouting clones returned. Naruto, perplexed, facepalmed, why didn't you just dispel? He asked the clone, who huffed and replied, TCH, that's why, before tossing something toward the original. Naruto caught the object midair and his eyes widened. It's the scroll we need. Well done, me, he exclaimed. His clone immediately protested. No, it's not you, it's me. Sasuke quickly cut in, asking how the clone had obtained the scroll. Easy, the clone smirked. There were a few teams fighting each other, and I just happened to notice one of their scrolls lying on the ground, so I swiped it. With their required scrolls in hand, Team 7 set off for the tower, feeling more confident than ever. But their relief was short-lived. Out of nowhere, they were caught in a fierce gust of wind that scattered the team. Separated and dazed, Naruto found himself face to face with a massive snake. He barely managed to dodge its attack as it lunged, attempting to swallow him whole. After summoning a few clones, Naruto managed to defeat the beast, but the adrenaline coursing through his veins left him rattled. He raced through the trees, desperately searching for Sasuke and Sakura. When he finally found them, They were locked in combat with a terrifyingly strong shinobi, a snake-like figure with an eerie presence. Naruto threw himself into the fight, but he quickly realized they were outmatched. He remembered little after that. The shinobi had hit him in his gut before his consciousness began slipping away. When Naruto awoke, Sasuke had been bitten on the neck by that creepy shinobi. Sakura, apparently, had been watching over both of them while they were unconscious, but she had been ambushed. Head by a team of sound ninjas. She told him later that Rock Lee had intervened to protect her, only to be defeated as well. Even Team 10 had shown up to help, but they too were overwhelmed. In the end, it had been Sasuke, marked and changed, who had defeated their attackers. TCH, always Sasuke that bastard, Naruto thought, feeling both frustration and relief. The rest of the exam had been relatively uneventful for them. They had made it to the tower, dealt with a few small skirmishes, and opened their scrolls, only to have Iruka appear from inside them. That moment had been a welcome surprise, a rare moment of comfort amid the chaos. But now, standing here in the third exam room, Naruto's attention snapped back to the present as the Hokage cleared his throat, drawing the attention of every genin in the room. The Hokage stood tall before the gathered genin, his gaze sweeping over the eager yet cautious faces. His voice was calm yet commanding as he began, "Congratulations to you all for passing the second exam. The third examination is about to commence. But before we move forward with the details of this final phase, I want to speak about something important. It concerns the underlying reason behind the Chunin exams." Quote, "The room, filled with tension from the trials they had endured, fell into a hushed silence. Every genin present was curious. Most had never considered that the exams had any deeper meaning beyond ranking up in the shinobi system. Why do you think the Chunin exams are being held with the joint collaboration of the allied nations?" The Hokage paused, letting the question linger in the air, challenging the young shinobi to think beyond what they knew. After a few moments, he continued, "On the surface, it seems to promote friendship and cooperation among the allied nations, to raise the standard of our shinobi through competition." However, his voice grew more serious. The true nature of the Chunin exams is much more complex. Many of the genin furrowed their brows in confusion, leaning forward slightly, paying even closer attention. The Chunin exams are, in fact, a controlled version of war between our villages, the Hokage explained, his tone steady but grave. While it serves to evaluate the potential of shinobi candidates to rise to the rank of Chunin, it is also a political tool. Through these exams, the allied villages test each other's military strength without open conflict. It allows us to gauge the prowess and tactical abilities of our shinobi, the next generation of warriors who may one day lead their villages. Naruto blinked in surprise, and many of the genin around him exchanged uncertain glances. The thought of the exams being more than just a stepping stone to becoming Chunin hadn't crossed their minds. The Hokage continued, "Each of your villages is represented here. By showcasing your abilities, you're not only proving your own worth but also the strength of your village. The potential for recruitment, alliances, and even deterrence are all factors weighed by our leaders as they watch these battles. It's an intricate dance of power that balances military strength with diplomacy." Quote, the weight of the Hokage's words began to sink in, and the mood in the room shifted. This was not just about becoming Chunin, this was about how their actions would reflect on their homes, their nations. "Do not misunderstand, however," the Hokage said, his voice softening slightly. "While the Chunin exams serve as a way for our villages to assess one another, the exam's primary purpose still remains, to find those among you who possess the qualities necessary to become Chunin. You are being tested not only for your combat ability but for your leadership, decision-making under pressure, and your ability to carry out complex missions." The Hokage's eyes scanned the genin once more. To become a Chunin means more than just becoming stronger. It means leading others into dangerous situations. It means carrying the responsibility of lives on your shoulders and making decisions that could impact your village's future. Quote, The room had grown even quieter as the genin took in the gravity of what the Hokage was saying. This exam was about more than just power, it was about how they would carry the burdens of war, diplomacy, and leadership in the world they lived in. In these exams, you are not just fighting for yourselves, the Hokage finished. You are representing your village. The results of these battles will shape your future and the future of your homeland. Remember this well as you proceed to the next stage of the exam. Quote, the genin were left to absorb the weight of his words, fully understanding now that the Chunin exams were not just a test of their abilities, but a stage for something much larger. Before the Hokage could continue explaining the details of the upcoming exam, a soft cough echoed from the side of the room. The sound came from a tall, lanky Jonin with pale skin and dark hair, his eyes heavy with the hint of fatigue. Despite his sickly appearance, there was a sharpness in his gaze that hinted at the experience and skill lying beneath his frail exterior. This was Hayate Gecko, known for his talent with the sword and his responsibility as the proctor for the final stage of the Chunin exams. Pardon the interruption, Lord Hokage, Hayate said in a raspy voice, bowing respectfully. But if I may, I'd like to explain the details to the candidates. After all, I am the proctor for the third exam. The Hokage gave Hayate an understanding smile and nodded. Of course, Hayate. The floor is yours. Quote, Hayate gave the gathered genin a moment to absorb the weight of his words, his tired gaze flickering across their faces, many showing signs of shock and uncertainty. He allowed a small pause before delivering the final blow. And just so you're all aware, Hayate continued, his voice carrying a steely edge, the preliminary rounds will begin right now. The room erupted with reactions, shocked gasps, widened eyes, and quiet murmurs of disbelief rippling through the rows of young shinobi. Naruto's jaw dropped as his body tensed. Right now, he blurted, echoing what many of the others were thinking. Sakura bit her lip nervously, already worrying about Sasuke, who looked calm on the surface but was silently grimacing, a hand hovering near the cursed mark on his neck. He wasn't ready for this, not yet. Meanwhile, Kiba groaned in frustration, Akamaru whimpering softly on his shoulder. Are you serious? Kiba muttered, clearly rattled by the suddenness of it all. He wasn't the only one. Several of the other genin looked just as unprepared, their exhaustion from the forest of death still evident in their stances. But Hayate didn't falter, his expression unchanging. This is part of the exam. You'll need to be ready for anything at any time, without warning. The life of a shinobi is no different. The pressure of his words hung over the room, and while many of the genin looked nervous or unsettled, there was also a growing sense of determination in the air. They had made it this far, and no one was willing to give up now, not after enduring the hardships of the second exam. Hayate coughed lightly, clearing his throat before delivering his next instructions. If anyone wishes to withdraw, now is the time to do so. Otherwise, the preliminary rounds will commence immediately. Just as the weight of Hayate's words settled over the room, a hand shot up from the line of genin. I think I'll withdraw, Kabuto announced, his tone calm but carrying a hint of exhaustion. Naruto spun around in shock. Kabuto, what are you talking about? You've come this far. Kabuto gave a weary smile, adjusting his glasses. I've already taken part in several exams, and I've been through a lot in this one already. My body's not in the best shape, and I think I've reached my limit. No point in pushing myself too hard, right? Quote. Hayate simply nodded, not particularly surprised. Very well. You're free to go, he said, his voice retaining its usual hoarse tone. Kabuto nodded back gratefully. Good luck to the rest of you, he said before turning to leave. As he walked out of the room, Naruto clenched his fists, feeling a pang of disappointment. He had looked up to Kabuto for his experience, but now he was leaving without even giving the preliminaries a shot. As Hayate prepared to continue his explanation, he paused for a moment, realizing he had forgotten an important detail. Before we move on, he rasped, I forgot to mention, moving forward, you'll be fighting as individuals. These rounds will not be based on your teams anymore. The announcement took some genin by surprise, while others appeared undeterred, their expressions hardening with renewed focus. Suddenly, a sharp gasp broke through the tension. Sasuke, standing in the line with his team, grabbed his shoulder in obvious pain, his face contorting as if struggling to maintain control. Naruto whipped around, concern written across his face. Sasuke? Naruto asked, confused and worried. Sakura stepped forward, her own face filled with fear. Sasuke, you can't keep pretending you're okay. That mark, it's making you act up. Her voice trembled with both anger and desperation. Naruto blinked in confusion. Mark, he thought to himself. What mark? Sasuke gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain. Shut up, Sakura. I'm not quitting. Sakura's frustration boiled over. You have to. You're going to hurt yourself. She said, her voice rising. If you won't do it, then I'll tell them myself. She turned to raise her hand, ready to alert the proctors. But before she could, Sasuke's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist firmly. His grip, though not painful, was enough to stop her in her tracks. His eyes burned with stubborn defiance. No, he said, voice low but determined. You're not telling anyone. I don't care about becoming a Chunin. That doesn't matter to me anymore. I'm in this exam to prove one thing, that I'm strong. Naruto's fist clenched, anger rising in his chest. Sasuke, you jerk. Don't treat Sakura like that. She's only trying to help you. Quote. But Sasuke cut him off, locking eyes with Naruto. His expression was intense, almost cold. Naruto, he said, his voice calmer now but filled with purpose. You're one of the people I want to fight. Naruto froze, his anger replaced by shock. For a moment, everything seemed to fall silent. Sasuke's words hung in the air, heavy with tension, as Naruto tried to comprehend what his teammate had just said. Preliminaries begin. Hayate, observing the tension between the teammates, waited for the moment to pass before clearing his throat and addressing the room once again. His raspy voice cut through the atmosphere. It's time to begin, he announced, causing the room to quiet down as the genin turned their attention back to him. The preliminary matches will be conducted in a tournament style, one-on-one battles. This will test not only your combat skills, but your strategy, adaptability, and endurance. Quote. A murmur spread through the group as the gravity of his words set in. The genin were now sizing up their competition, knowing that the next few hours could determine the course of their futures. Hayate continued, since there are now an even number of candidates, 20 of you remain, there will be 10 bouts in total. Each match will be between 2 candidates, and the winner will proceed to the third and final exam. The announcement hit the genin hard. The realization that their fate would now depend on individual combat was enough to stir both excitement and anxiety among them. Some clenched their fists in determination, while others darted nervous glances at their potential opponents. Naruto's eyes scanned the room, lingering on Sasuke. He could feel the tension still radiating from his teammate. One-on-one, Naruto thought. I guess this is where we see who's really the strongest. Hayate's expression turned serious as he continued his explanation. The battles will be no holds barred. Each participant will fight until their opponent is unconscious, dead, or admits defeat. There are no restrictions on the techniques you use, but killing is not the goal of this exam. However, should you die, it's your own fault. The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, casting an ominous silence over the genin. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. No holds barred. The stakes of the exam just skyrocketed. He glanced around at the other candidates, each of them tense, their eyes sharp with anticipation and worry. After letting that information settle in, Hayate motioned to the wall behind him, where a large screen suddenly lit up. The electronic scoreboard flickered to life, and Hayate stepped aside to give them a full view of it. This scoreboard, he explained, will randomly select 2 names at a time. The 2 chosen will face each other in battle. Quote. The room buzzed with nervous energy as the genin stared at the screen, waiting to see who would be the first to fight. Each name on the board represented a potential opponent, and a potential threat. Once the names appear, those two will come down to the arena below and begin their fight immediately, Hayate added, his voice steady despite the obvious tension in the room. The anticipation was palpable as the scoreboard began to spin, the names of all the remaining genin flickering rapidly across the screen. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see whose names would be called first. The scoreboard's flickering names came to a sudden and dramatic stop. The first two names appeared in bold letters. Sasuke Uchiha vs. Akado Yoroi. The room fell into a hush, everyone turning to glance at Sasuke, who stared at the screen, determination burning in his eyes. He let out a small grunt, ignoring the pain still lingering in his shoulder from Orochimaru's cursed mark. Sakura looked worried, but Sasuke's mind was focused on one thing: he couldn't afford to lose here, not in front of Naruto, not in front of anyone. Hayate stepped forward. Sasuke Uchiha and Akado Yoroi, please come to the arena. Quote. Sasuke calmly walked toward the balcony's edge, glancing down at the large stone floor of the arena below. Yoroi, a rather mysterious shinobi with dark hair and a mask covering most of his face, already stood waiting. He had a confident air about him, his eyes narrowed at Sasuke as if sizing him up. Sasuke descended into the arena, jumping down to land gracefully on the stone floor. He could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him, especially Naruto's, who watched from above, his fists clenched. Ready? Hayate asked, looking between both contestants. Sasuke's gaze was fixed on his opponent. He nodded. Yoroi, his expression unreadable under his mask, merely grunted in acknowledgement. Begin. Hayate called out, jumping back to give them space. Yoroi wasted no time in rushing toward Sasuke. He moved swiftly, his hands glowing faintly with a chakra-based technique. Sasuke immediately jumped back, dodging the initial attack. Yoroi's hand missed Sasuke's face by inches, but Sasuke quickly realized something strange: his body felt sluggish, weaker than usual. The cursed mark pulsed at his neck, still dormant but clearly affecting him. Yoroi came at him again, aiming to grab him. Sasuke attempted to counter, aiming a punch at Yoroi's midsection, but Yoroi managed to catch Sasuke's arm with his chakra-infused hand. A strange sensation immediately washed over Sasuke as Yoroi's technique took effect. He was draining Sasuke's chakra. Sasuke's eyes widened in shock as he felt his strength being sapped away. Yoroi's hand glowed brighter as the chakra-draining ability intensified. You're already finished, Yoroi sneered, tightening his grip. Sasuke gritted his teeth, feeling his energy rapidly depleting. He had to think fast. His Sharingan still wasn't active, and with the cursed mark constantly threatening to take over, he was fighting on uneven ground. Damn it! Sasuke cursed under his breath, realizing he couldn't afford to let this drag on. Desperation lit a fire in him, and in a moment of quick thinking, Sasuke grabbed Yoroi's wrist with his free hand and performed a quick maneuver, kicking off the ground and twisting in midair to land a RFUL spinning kick to Yoroi's face. The blow connected, sending Yoroi staggering backward. Sasuke landed gracefully, clutching his arm where Yoroi had grabbed him. His chakra reserves were drained, but he refused to show weakness. He had to end this quickly. Yoroi, now visibly angry, rushed at Sasuke again, but this time Sasuke was ready. Drawing on his remaining strength, Sasuke leapt into the air and unleashed the lion combo, the same technique Rock Lee had tried using on Naruto. He delivered a series of rapid punches and kicks, ending with a powerful dropkick that slammed Yoroi into the ground with brutal force. Yoroi hit the ground hard, the impact echoing throughout the room. Sasuke landed lightly on his feet, breathing heavily but standing tall. Yoroi, unable to get up, lay motionless on the ground. Hayate stepped forward, checking Yoroi's condition. After a moment, he raised his hand. Winner, Sasuke Uchiha. The room was silent for a beat, then filled with murmurs. Sasuke stood there, his body trembling slightly from the exertion. He glanced up at Naruto, who was watching intently from the balcony. The battle had taken its toll, but Sasuke had won without succumbing to the cursed mark. As he walked back toward his team, Sakura ran up to him, concerned. Sasuke, I'm fine, he cut her off, his voice steady but strained. He glanced at Naruto, who nodded silently, acknowledging the strength Sasuke had shown. For now, Sasuke had triumphed, but the ominous presence of the cursed mark still loomed over him. Before the next match could commence, a group of medical ninja hurried into the arena. They quickly approached Yoroi, who was still lying unconscious from Sasuke's relentless attack. With efficient, practiced movements, they lifted him onto a stretcher, carefully carrying him out of the arena to receive further treatment. As they began to leave, one of the medical ninja turned to Sasuke, who was standing a bit unsteadily, clearly drained from the battle. You'll need treatment as well, the medic said, gesturing for Sasuke to follow them. Before Sasuke could respond, Kakashi suddenly appeared at his side, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Don't worry about Sasuke, Kakashi said, his eye crinkling into a smile beneath his mask. I'll take care of him myself. Quote. The medical ninja hesitated for a moment, glancing between Kakashi and Sasuke. Seeing the confidence in Kakashi's demeanor, they eventually nodded and returned their focus to Yoroi, who was now being carried out of the room. Kakashi gently guided Sasuke away from the arena, his voice low and calm as he spoke to him. Let's go, Sasuke. You need to rest and, we need to talk. Sasuke nodded, though a hint of apprehension crossed his features as he followed Kakashi out of the arena. As Kakashi led Sasuke out of the arena, he leaned in close and whispered, his voice barely audible, I'll seal the curse mark for now. Sasuke's eyes widened in shock, his body stiffening at Kakashi's words. He hadn't expected anyone, not even Kakashi, to know about the mark's true nature, much less be able to control it. His mind raced as he processed what this could mean, a mixture of relief and apprehension washing over him. He glanced at Kakashi, but the older shinobi's face remained calm and unreadable, giving no further explanation as they continued to walk. Sasuke's shock lingered, but he realized quickly that this was his chance to stay in the exams without the curse overtaking him, at least for now. The electronic scoreboard whirred to life once again, its letters rapidly cycling through the remaining names. The tension in the room was palpable, each genin wondering if they would be the next to step into the ring. Then, after a few long seconds, the names came to a halt. Zaku Abumi vs. Shino Aburame. As the names appeared on the board, Zaku glanced at his opponent and scoffed, who's that loser? His tone was dismissive, his confidence oozing through his words as he stepped into the center of the room, cracking his neck and stretching his arms. On the other side, Shino remained silent, calmly adjusting his sunglasses, his expression unreadable. He didn't rise to Zaku's provocation, he merely walked forward with his hands in his pockets, his eerie calmness enough to send a ripple of unease through the other genin. Zaku Abumi of the Sound Village vs. Shino Aburame of the Leaf Village, Hayate announced, stepping back after confirming both were ready. Begin. Zaku smirked as soon as the command was given, raising his arms in an instant. I'll finish this quick, he declared, preparing to unleash his signature technique. But Shino, as always, remained motionless, as though waiting for Zaku to make the first move. The match between Shino and Zaku began with an intense focus. Zaku Abumi, glaring at Shino, clenched his single usable arm, his right arm still hanging limp from a previous injury. Without hesitation, Zaku dashed forward, swinging his left arm wildly at Shino's face. Shino stepped back, narrowly avoiding the blow but keeping his calm, analytical expression. Zaku wasn't done yet. Got you, he yelled, aiming his left hand directly at Shino and unleashing a powerful sound wave from the vents embedded in his palm. A violent blast of compressed sound energy hit Shino square in the chest, sending him flying backward across the room and crashing into the ground with a heavy thud. The impact kicked up a cloud of dust as Shino lay on the floor, unmoving for a moment. Zaku smirked triumphantly. That's what you get for standing around like a loser. But as the dust settled, Shino slowly rose to his feet, adjusting his glasses. He calmly wiped his face, revealing a trail of bugs crawling over his skin. Zaku's expression shifted from triumph to confusion as he noticed the insects beginning to swarm around Shino's body. That's enough, Shino said, his voice cold and steady. You will lose this fight. Zaku's eyes narrowed, the weight of Shino's words grating on his pride. Ha, I'm still standing, and you're barely holding on. What makes you think you've already won? Shino turned slightly, gesturing toward the swarm of Kikaichu that gathered behind him. Your choice is simple. You can attack me, or the bugs. But not both. Either way, you'll be left defenseless. Zaku grit his teeth, growing furious. You think I'm weak, huh? He grinned wickedly as he raised his limp right arm. You're wrong. I still have another trick up my sleeve. With a sudden movement, Zaku swung up his seemingly useless right arm. To everyone's shock, his vents opened. I'm not done yet. Zaku screamed as he prepared to blast Shino and his bugs from both directions. Shino's gaze remained steady as he watched the scene unfold. You shouldn't have done that, he said, his voice soft but filled with certainty. Zaku unleashed his sound wave in both directions, one toward Shino, the other toward the swarm of insects. But before the compressed air could fully escape, both vents on Zaku's hands suddenly jammed. The Kikaichu bugs had already infiltrated his arms and blocked the pathways, clogging the vents completely. Zaku's eyes widened in horror. No, he barely had time to react before both of his arms were consumed by the full force of his own sound wave, creating a massive internal explosion. The technique backfired, and his arms were ravaged by the blast. Blood splattered as his body was thrown violently to the ground, his arms now mangled and destroyed. The crowd stood in silence, shocked by the brutal counterattack. Zaku groaned in pain, trying to move, but his body wouldn't respond. Shino quietly approached him from behind, his bugs swarming back into his sleeves. In one swift, precise movement, Shino delivered a sharp chop to the back of Zaku's neck, knocking him out cold. The sound ninja collapsed, completely unconscious. Hayate, watching from the sidelines, stepped forward and raised his hand. Winner. Shino Aburame. Shino walked away methodically, as though the battle had been nothing more than an inevitable outcome. Zaku's broken body lay on the floor, defeated and humiliated by Shino's calculated victory. Meanwhile, with Kakashi and Sasuke. As Kakashi finished weaving the final hand signs, he pressed his palm against the curse mark on Sasuke's neck. The seal flared with a glowing light, surrounding the mark with complex symbols that restrained its sinister power. Sasuke's body stiffened as the sealing process began to take effect. The mark pulsed violently under Kakashi's hand, as if resisting, but eventually, the power was subdued. Sasuke gasped sharply, his eyes widening in shock. He felt a surge of intense pressure, and then his body gave out. The strain from the curse mark, combined with the seal, overwhelmed him. He collapsed, falling unconscious in Kakashi's arms. Kakashi gently lowered Sasuke to the ground, his expression calm but thoughtful as he looked at the unconscious boy. He sighed, muttering to himself, at least this should hold it off for now. As he was about to lift Sasuke to carry him out, a chilling presence suddenly filled the room. Kakashi's eyes narrowed, his senses immediately alert. Emerging from the shadows, Orochimaru stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with twisted amusement. Orochimaru. Kakashi muttered, his voice cold. The serpentine Sannin smiled darkly. You're quite the persistent one, Kakashi. But no matter how many seals you place, you cannot stop the inevitable. Sasuke will come to me of his own free will. The allure of power is far too tempting for someone like him. Quote. Kakashi remained silent, his gaze locked onto Orochimaru, unwavering. That boy, Orochimaru continued, his voice dripping with malice, he thirsts for strength. Strength to kill his brother. Strength to avenge his clan. No seal can restrain such a desire forever. Kakashi clenched his fists, but his composure didn't falter. As long as I'm his teacher, I'll make sure he doesn't fall into your hands. Orochimaru's smile widened, his tone laced with mockery. We'll see. It's only a matter of time before he seeks me out. With that, Orochimaru turned and vanished into the shadows just as quickly as he had appeared, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Kakashi knelt beside Sasuke, his eyes softening. I won't let him have you, he whispered before lifting the unconscious boy onto his back. Not if I can help it. Back to the preliminaries. As the preliminary rounds continued, the atmosphere in the arena remained charged with anticipation, punctuated by the dramatic and varied outcomes of the matches. First up was the bout between Kankuro and Masumi Tsurugi. The match began with Tsurugi confidently closing in on Kankuro, seemingly having him trapped. However, just when it appeared Tsurugi had the upper hand, the situation took an unexpected turn. The so-called Kankuro was revealed to be a mere puppet, expertly controlled by the real Kankuro hidden behind the scenes. With a swift maneuver, Kankuro's puppet ensnared Tsurugi, rendering him unable to escape. Tsurugi's defeat was sealed as Kankuro's puppet delivered the final blow, showcasing Kankuro's clever use of his puppet mastery. Next was Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka. The fight was a fierce showcase of both kunoichi's skills and their deep-rooted rivalry. The match was intense, with both girls demonstrating impressive tactics and abilities. Ino attempted to use her mind transfer jutsu to gain control over Sakura, but Sakura's resilience kept her in the fight. Despite a valiant effort from both sides, the match ended in a dramatic double knockout, with both fighters collapsing to the ground simultaneously. The medics rushed in to attend to both competitors as the crowd erupted in mixed cheers and concern. Following that was the match between Tenten and Temari. Tenten's expertise with weapons was severely undermined by Temari's large fan. As the match began, Temari unleashed a powerful gust of wind that scattered all of Tenten's weapons, leaving her defenseless. With her arsenal neutralized, Tenten had little chance against Temari's relentless wind-based attacks. The match concluded quickly with Temari's overwhelming victory, demonstrating the formidable power of her wind techniques. Finally, Shikamaru Nara faced off against Kintsuchi. Shikamaru, known for his strategic brilliance, employed his shadow possession jutsu to outmaneuver Kin. Using his shadows to control her movements, Shikamaru forced Kin into a precarious position. Kin, unable to escape Shikamaru's well-executed strategy, ended up being knocked out by her own actions. Shikamaru's clever tactics and strategic foresight earned him a well-deserved victory, further showcasing his tactical genius. The preliminary rounds had seen a variety of combat styles and strategies, with each match adding to the excitement and tension of the Chunin exams. As the final matches approached, the remaining genin waited with bated breath for their chance to prove themselves in the arena. Uzumaki Naruto vs Inuzuka Kiba. He was itching to get into the ring and show everyone just how much he had improved since his days as the so-called dead last. Kiba's name flashed up next to his, and the Inuzuka's usual cocky grin widened. Kiba was certain that he had drawn the easiest opponent. Looks like I'm up against the dead last, he said with a smirk, his voice carrying across the room. Guess I lucked out. Naruto stepped forward with a grin. Don't be so sure, Kiba. I've been training hard, and I'm not the same Naruto you remember. You're in for a surprise. Kiba scoffed, dismissing Naruto's claim as bravado. Whatever. Just don't hold me up. I've got better things to do than waste time with you. The two fighters took their places in the center of the arena. Naruto, brimming with excitement and confidence, made a show of exasperation, waving his hands dramatically towards Kiba and his loyal companion, Akamaru. Come on, Kiba, get that puppy out of the arena so we can start this already. He called out, his voice carrying a mix of impatience and challenge. Kiba, not one to be easily intimidated, shot Naruto a defiant glare. No way, Akamaru is fighting with me, like always. We're a team, he retorted, his tone full of stubborn pride. Naruto turned to Hayate, who was standing at the edge of the arena, seeking clarification. Is that even allowed? He asked curiously. Hayate, with his characteristic calm demeanor, nodded in confirmation. Any animals a ninja uses as part of their skills are considered the same as any weapons or tools. They are allowed in the match, he explained, his voice steady and authoritative. Naruto, not one to be easily deterred, turned back to Kiba with a determined glint in his eye. Whatever. I could beat you even if you had a pack of wolves with you, he declared boldly, his tone brimming with self-assuredness. Kiba smirked, his confidence only growing. Big talk from the dead last. Naruto's excitement was palpable as Hayate turned to the genin and asked if they were ready. Both Naruto and Kiba nodded eagerly, their faces set with determination. Hayate signaled the beginning of the match. As soon as the signal was given, Naruto's mind raced. Right. Use your head, Naruto. Show everyone you've grown, he reminded himself, trying to recall what little he knew about Kiba's fighting style. I haven't seen him in action with Akamaru before. I need to figure out how he fights. Use your clones. Naruto promptly summoned several shadow clones. He watched as Kiba, having dismissed Naruto as a mere threat, immediately took action. Kiba dropped to all fours, activating his beast mimicry jutsu. With a burst of speed, Kiba launched himself at Naruto. Naruto's clones intercepted the attack, but one was swiftly taken out by Kiba's surprise assault. The remaining two clones managed to hold Kiba at bay, though Kiba's ferocity and skill left him momentarily taken aback. Naruto's improvement in taijutsu was evident, but Kiba, unfazed, declared, "You'll need more than better taijutsu and a few clones to beat me." Quote. Kiba once more charged at Naruto, this time with Akamaru by his side. As Kiba neared, he tossed a smoke bomb onto the field. Naruto's eyes widened as the smoke began to envelop him. He quickly tried to escape, but as he neared the edge of the smoke, Akamaru ambushed him. When the smoke cleared, Naruto was revealed lying unconscious beside a jubilant Akamaru. Kiba grinned triumphantly. Haha. Well done, Akamaru. He cheered, reaching out to hug his dog. But before the hug could be completed, Akamaru transformed into Naruto, who swiftly delivered a powerful punch to Kiba's face. Kiba staggered back, stunned by the unexpected counterattack. As Kiba struggled to his feet, he saw Naruto grinning from across the arena. Next to Naruto stood another Naruto, one of his shadow clones, holding Akamaru firmly by the paws. Kiba shook his head in disbelief. You've gotten stronger, Naruto, but I'm still going to kick your. With a determined look, Kiba reached into his pocket and threw something towards Akamaru. The dog caught it in his mouth, and moments later, his size increased and his fur turned a vibrant red. Naruto's clone released the now enlarged Akamaru, who quickly joined Kiba. Kiba shouted, "It's time to end this." And with Akamaru barking atop his head, Kiba performed his man-beast clone technique. Akamaru transformed into a more feral version of Kiba, and together, they charged Naruto with a wild, animal-like aggression. Naruto, unimpressed by the display, muttered to himself, "This guy's gotta be on drugs or something." Hayate's voice cut through the arena, "It's a military ration pill. They're permitted in the matches," much to Naruto's irritation. As the pair of Kiba and Akamaru bore down on him with furious speed, Naruto used his shadow clones to keep up the pressure. The clones and Kiba's attacks caused a chaotic melee, but Naruto finally managed to spot the real Kiba when he called out to Akamaru to stop attacking. Naruto quickly had his clones throw kunai to separate Kiba and Akamaru. With the two now apart, Naruto directed his clones to engage Akamaru, while he himself charged at Kiba. The ensuing taijutsu bout was intense, with Naruto demonstrating that he was not just on par with Kiba's taijutsu skills but superior. He countered, dodged, and blocked Kiba's attacks with impressive agility. Naruto's grin widened as he shouted, "Now it's time to end this, Kiba." He launched a powerful combo that sent Kiba sprawling to the ground. As Kiba struggled to rise, Hayate declared Naruto the winner. Naruto's face beamed with satisfaction as he strolled up the staircase, elated by his decisive victory. Throughout the match, he had never been under any serious threat, and that realization filled him with immense pride and happiness. Thank you all for the reviews, and due to the majority saying it'd be best to skip the Forest of Death and just have a recap, I did so. I might have been better off skipping the preliminaries too though, as I feel I may have gotten carried away writing the fight scenes. Please let me know what you thought of Naruto vs Kiba. I feel that the fight went sort of similarly to canon, with the main difference being Naruto's improvement in the basics. I understand if you are getting impatient with the lack of changes as of yet, but please be patient. Remember that Naruto has only been practicing the basics as of right now. And what's due to come? A month of training, with Jiraiya, with clones. Honestly, think about it, let's say Naruto still only uses 20 clones for training. That's 20 days of training in a day, or 21 if you include Naruto himself. Now if we were to say Naruto did this training every day, which really isn't too unlikely. That's 21 x 30, 630 days of training. That's roughly 20 months of training. It genuinely feels a little overboard, but I'm writing this story how I genuinely think this change would affect the story should it actually have happened. Thus, there's not really any way for me to change the story to nerf Naruto's training. After the preliminaries are completed, Naruto will begin training. And by the end of it, the boy will be a beast. Came far, going further. Naruto stood there, mindlessly gripping the small tub of ointment that Hinata had given him after his battle with Kiba. He didn't really need it, he had barely been touched during the fight. Yet, he couldn't quite understand why Hinata had given it to him. Maybe she noticed how much he had grown, or maybe it was just her way of showing support. Either way, his thoughts were far from the small gift, instead drifting as he absently watched Choji's match against Dosu. His mind was consumed by the memories of the two previous matches, ones that stirred something deep within him. Flashback start. First, there had been Hinata's fight against Neji. The memory burned into his mind, not just because of the violence, but because of the way Neji had treated her. His words were cruel, venomous, as he belittled Hinata and claimed that she was unfit to be a shinobi, fated to lose. Simply because of who she was. Naruto had been furious, shouting from the stands for Neji to shut up, telling Hinata she could change if she tried. He wanted her to fight back, to show Neji he was wrong. At the start, Hinata had held her own. But then, Neji's true strength was revealed. His strikes, methodical and ruthless, wore her down bit by bit. Even when her defenses crumbled, Hinata refused to give in. But it wasn't enough. Neji aimed a brutal final blow, one that would have killed her if the Jonin-sensei hadn't intervened just in time. Naruto could still feel the anger as he thought of Neji's words about fate, about how Hinata was destined to fail, and that she couldn't change her place in the world. Naruto's grip on the railing tightened as he remembered the blood Hinata left behind in the arena. Without thinking, he had dipped his hand into it, his fist clenched in fury as he silently vowed to win. I will defeat Neji, he had promised. I'll show him fate doesn't control us. But there was another match that shook Naruto to his core, a battle that made him realize just how much farther he still had to go. As the match began, Lee wasted no time, launching himself at Gaara with incredible speed and agility. His fists and feet moved like lightning, but Gaara didn't even flinch. Every attack Lee made was blocked by Gaara's sand, which automatically formed a protective barrier around him. Lee's kicks struck the sand, but it was like trying to punch through steel. What's wrong? Is that all you've got? Gaara said, his expression cold and emotionless, as his sand continued to shield him from Lee's attacks. But Lee was undeterred. His mentor, Guy-sensei, called out from the sidelines, reminding Lee that it was time to use that technique. Lee hesitated for a moment but then made his decision. He leapt back from Gaara, and with a determined expression, he reached down and unstrapped the heavy weights from his legs. The room is filled with murmurs. Weights. What was the point of that? But the moment Lee let them go, the truth was revealed. The weights crashed to the ground with a deafening boom, causing the floor to crack and sink beneath the weight. The crowd gasped in shock. Those weights had been slowing him down. In an instant, Lee vanished from sight, moving with such speed that Gaara's sand struggled to keep up. The sand barrier that had been untouchable until now was being pushed to its limits. Lee darted around Gaara like a blur, landing hit after hit, smashing through the sand defense and landing a powerful blow to Gaara's cheek. The crowd was in awe. Someone had finally managed to land a hit on Gaara. But as the sand fell away, the true nature of Gaara's defense became clear. A shell of hardened sand covered his skin beneath his clothes, protecting him from injury. Gaara's lips curled into a sinister grin, his eyes gleaming with bloodlust. Lee, however, wasn't done yet. Seeing no other option, he decided to push himself even further. With a steely look of determination, he began opening the 8 inner gates, forbidden techniques that release the body's full potential but at a dangerous cost. One by one, Lee opened the 3rd, 4th, and finally, the 5th gate. His muscles bulged, veins popping as his body was pushed beyond its limits. A fiery green aura surrounded him, and his speed and strength became overwhelming. Gaara's sand couldn't keep up anymore. Lee launched his ultimate attack, the primary lotus, sending Gaara high into the air with a series of dizzying blows. He grabbed Gaara midair and spun him violently before slamming him down toward the ground with bone-shattering force. But Gaara wasn't done. At the last moment, his sand cushioned the impact, creating a hollowed-out shell in the ground. Gaara's face showed a crazed expression, and his sand swirled around him, more aggressive than ever. Exhausted, Lee staggered as the effects of opening the gates began to wear on him. His body was struggling under the strain, but he refused to give up. Gaara, meanwhile, was preparing his sand coffin, intending to crush Lee where he stood. Lee, barely able to stand, still tried to push forward, still tried to fight. But Gaara's sand wrapped around Lee's arm and leg, preparing to finish him off. Gaara's fingers curled as he muttered, "Sand coffin." Quote. With a sickening crunch, Lee's arm and leg were crushed. The crowd watched in horror as Lee fell to the ground, battered and broken. But even in his unconscious state, Lee attempted to stand, his body trembling as he struggled to rise. Guy-sensei watched in disbelief, tears forming in his eyes as he realized the extent of Lee's determination and the damage done to his body. Before Gaara could land a killing blow, the match was called to a halt. Guy-sensei intervened, rushing to his student's side, catching him as he collapsed. The fight was over. Naruto's thoughts were still clouded with the haunting words from the medic ninja. Lee, the boy who had pushed his body beyond its limits, might never be able to fight again. The determination and effort Lee had shown in his battle against Gaara left an impact on Naruto that was hard to shake. Lee had fought for his dream, putting everything on the line, only to be crushed, quite literally, by his own strength. Naruto had wanted to go to Lee's side, but the medics had gotten there first. As he had overheard the medic talking to Guy-sensei, those devastating words echoed in his mind. He'll survive, but he'll never recover enough to go back to his ninja duties. Quote. Naruto clenched his fists in frustration. Lee had fought so hard, but now he might never be able to fight again. The thought alone made Naruto's heart ache. Is this the fate of shinobi? He thought. To risk everything and possibly lose it all. He hated the idea that someone as dedicated as Lee could be forced to give up on his dream. It made Naruto question his own path for a brief moment. Would something like this happen to him one day? But just as quickly as the doubt came, Naruto pushed it away. No, he thought, Lee never gave up, and I won't either. I'll get stronger. I'll beat Neji. And I'll make sure I protect my friends. Flashback end. Before he could sink further into his thoughts, a loud crash brought Naruto back to the present. His eyes shifted to the arena floor, where he saw Choji lying defeated, swirls in his eyes. His match against Dosu had ended quickly, much to Naruto's disappointment. Choji had fought hard, but it hadn't been enough. With all 10 matches completed, Hayate Gecko stepped forward, calling for the victors to come down and line up. Naruto snapped out of his trance, a new sense of determination bubbling inside him. He glanced around at the other contestants, each of them strong, each of them formidable in their own rig. But he was ready. He had made a vow to win, and he would see it through. The victorious genin stood shoulder to shoulder in the arena, with 9 of them present. Sasuke was noticeably absent, his whereabouts a mystery. The defeated genin who remained conscious, along with their Jonin sensei, watched from above, curious about the next stage. Hayate Gecko, his usual calm and slightly weary demeanor unchanged, addressed the 9 remaining contestants. To you 9 who won your fight and earned the opportunity to participate in the finals, well done. His voice was hoarse but carried the weight of the moment. He paused briefly, then glanced toward the Hokage, giving him a slight nod. Lord Hokage, they're all yours. The Hokage smiled warmly, his wise and aged eyes scanning the group of young shinobi standing before him. Despite their youth, each one of them had shown remarkable potential in their battles. Thank you, Hayate, the Hokage responded, before stepping forward. His presence alone commanded respect. As Hayate said, well done to you all for winning your fights. The Hokage paused for a moment, his eyes lingering on each of the genin. I will now explain the details for the finals. Unlike the preliminaries, which were to reduce the number of participants, the finals are the true test of your abilities as shinobi. This is the stage where you will fight not only to prove yourselves but also to showcase your skills before the eyes of important dignitaries from various lands. You will have 1 month to prepare for the final rounds, the Hokage continued. Use this time wisely. Train, learn, and refine your skills. This will be a time for personal growth, where you can take everything you've learned up to this point and push yourselves to new limits. Naruto's eyes widened, excitement bubbling within him. A whole month. That was more than enough time for him to get even stronger, maybe even strong enough to take on Neji or Gaara. The Hokage's tone grew slightly more serious. The final matches will be fought in front of a large audience that also includes not only me but also the leaders of other nations. Naruto clenched his fists in determination. He had already made a promise to himself and to Hinata, to win. There was no way he was going to let anything stand in his way. Take this month to grow, the Hokage advised. For some of you, it may be the difference between victory and defeat. Quote, the Hokage stood before the victorious genin, smiling gently as they awaited his next instructions. He cleared his throat and gestured to Anko, who stepped forward carrying a wooden box. Before I dismiss you, I'd like each of you to take a slip of paper from this box. Please, one at a time, he instructed, without offering further explanation. The genin did as they were told. Anko moved down the line, offering the box to each of them. One by one, they reached in and drew their numbers. Once all the numbers were announced, the Hokage smiled knowingly, watching their expressions. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering why I had you pick these numbers without explaining what they were for, he said, observing their reactions. The genin straightened up, curiosity clearly evident. The Hokage continued, the reason I didn't tell you beforehand is to ensure fairness. If you had known what these numbers corresponded to, some of you might have been tempted to strategize, aiming for a specific matchup. By keeping the process hidden until now, I've ensured that the results are entirely based on chance. The Hokage nodded at Ibiki, who flipped his clipboard around, revealing the matchups. Tournament bracket. Match 1. Uzumaki Naruto 1 vs. Hyuga Neji 2. Match 2. Gaara 3 vs. Sasuke Uchiha 4. Match 3. Kankuro 5 vs. Aburame Shino 6. Match 4. Dosu Kinuta 7 vs. Shikamaru Nara 8. Tamari 9 advanced to the second round and faced the winner of match 4. Naruto's eyes immediately locked onto Neji, a fierce determination blazing in his gaze. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the moment. Finally, he thought, I get to beat that jerk to a pulp. Naruto couldn't wait to prove Neji wrong, to show him that people weren't chained down by something as stupid as fate. This wasn't just about avenging Hinata, it was about destroying the very idea that people couldn't change their destinies. On the other side of the row, Neji smirked slightly, pleased with how things had turned out. Fate, he mused, always works in my favor. In his mind, Naruto was already defeated, just another example of someone trying to defy what was inevitable. The Hyuga prodigy was more than ready to demonstrate that fate could not be escaped. Meanwhile, Shikamaru glanced at the bracket with a long, weary sigh. Why me? He thought, already troubled by the notion that he'd have to fight an extra match. What a drag, he muttered under his breath. The Hokage took in their varied expressions with an understanding smile. He gestured to the genin. We're about finished now, so you're all free to leave. That is, unless anyone has any questions. At this, Shikamaru lazily raised his hand. May I? The Hokage nodded, smiling. Go ahead. Shikamaru scratched the back of his head, visibly bored. So, since this is a tournament, that means there's only one winner, right? Does that mean only the victor will be promoted to Chunin? Quote. The Hokage shook his head kindly, explaining, no, Shikamaru, that's not the case. Like I mentioned earlier, your matches will be spectated not just by me, but also by cages from neighboring nations. We will be acting as judges. Based on your performance, each of us will assign a score. Even if you lose your first match, if you demonstrate the qualities we look for in a Chunin, you may still receive a promotion. Quote. The Hokage smiled, observing the group as he spoke. It's not about winning the tournament, it's about showcasing leadership, strategy, and the ability to make difficult decisions under pressure. That's what will earn you the title of Chunin. Of course, fighting in multiple matches gives you more opportunities to display your abilities. Shikamaru nodded lazily, satisfied with the explanation, though clearly wishing he didn't have to participate at all. Yeah, that answers it, he said. The Hokage gave a final nod to the group. Well then, well done to all of you. You are dismissed. As the group started to break up, Naruto's mind was already racing with plans. I need to train, and I need Kakashi-sensei to help me, he thought. His eyes scanned the stands, but Kakashi was nowhere to be seen. Frowning, Naruto quickly located Sakura. Hey, Sakura, where did Kakashi-sensei go? Exclamation mark quote. Naruto's face lit up with understanding. Thanks, he called out before dashing off toward the hospital, eager to catch up with Kakashi and begin his training. Inside Konoha's hospital, Naruto had hastily arrived at Konoha's hospital, practically pleading with the receptionist to tell him Here Sasuke's hospital room was. The receptionist, looking unimpressed, sternly told Naruto to keep his voice down and that visiting hours were over, insisting he'd have to return tomorrow. Before Naruto could argue any further, Kakashi appeared at the top of the stairway, his calm demeanor cutting through the tension. Naruto, cool it. This is a hospital, Kakashi said with a quiet firmness. Naruto's face brightened with excitement as he rushed over to his sensei. Kakashi-sensei, I need your help with training for the finals. Quote. Kakashi sighed softly and rubbed the back of his neck. I'm afraid I've already agreed to train Sasuke for the month, he replied, causing Naruto's excitement to instantly shift to annoyance and jealousy. Why Sasuke? Naruto grumbled. Kakashi looked genuine as he said. I understand your frustration, Naruto. And I'm genuinely sorry that I can't be the one to train you, I just don't think you'd gain as much as Sasuke would from my personal training. Which is exactly why I've arranged someone special for you, someone suited for you personally, he said with a knowing smile. Naruto blinked, confused. Just then, a familiar figure entered the room, Ebisu, Konohamaru's special Jonin trainer. Naruto glanced over his shoulder and instantly recognized him. Wait a second, this guy. Naruto exclaimed, remembering how he defeated Ebisu with his harem jutsu in the past. As he realized what was happening, Naruto's eyes widened, and he turned back to Kakashi, protesting, no way. I don't want this loser as my trainer. He's weaker than me. I beat him with my ha. Before Naruto could finish, Ebisu quickly clamped a hand over his mouth, whispering urgently for Naruto not to reveal that embarrassing incident. Please, Naruto, keep that between us, Ebisu pleaded, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Kakashi let out a small chuckle. Ebisu may not look it, but he's a special Jonin, Kakashi explained, seeing Naruto's confused look. A special Jonin is a shinobi who's usually around Chunin level in overall skill but has one area where they surpass even Jonin. Naruto gave Ebisu a doubtful look. But that means he's still weaker than you, Kakashi-sensei, right? Quote. Kakashi smiled behind his mask and glanced at Ebisu. The special Jonin stepped forward and addressed Naruto directly. Yes, Naruto, Kakashi is much stronger than me. In a fight, he'd easily win. However, there is one skill where I believe I surpass even him. Quote. Naruto raised an eyebrow, now slightly intrigued. And what's that? Teaching, Ebisu said with confidence. There's a reason the Hokage has entrusted me with training his grandson, Konohamaru. Naruto's excitement deflated slightly. Teaching. That's it. He seemed less impressed but still mildly curious. Ebisu nodded. Kakashi has shared some details about you, and I believe you have enormous potential. He also told me about the clever training method you developed using shadow clones to speed up your learning. Quote. Naruto's expression perked up at the mention of his training method. Yeah, it's pretty awesome, isn't it? He said, soaking up the praise. Ebisu smiled, continuing, I misjudged you before, Naruto, and for that, I apologize. But with my help, we can take that unique method of yours and refine it even further. Together, we can make something truly impressive out of your potential. Naruto puffed his chest out slightly but then furrowed his brow in a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Okay, but what exactly will we be doing for the month? Ebisu, after a dramatic pause, says, studying. Naruto's face twists in disbelief, and he instantly flops to the ground, groaning loudly. No way. No studying. That's lame. He rolls onto his back, dramatically throwing his arms over his face. Ebisu, undeterred by Naruto's theatrics, adjusts his glasses, the light reflecting off them with a sharp glint. He leans down, his tone serious but patient. Naruto, it's not as bad as you think. In fact, I'm suggesting something that plays to your strengths. Hear me out. Naruto peeks out from behind his arms, intrigued despite himself. Ebisu stands up straight again and continues, your ability to create shadow clones is unique. What if you use them to form a study group? You could create just 10 clones, each reading a different book or scroll. And with me guiding you through any confusion or difficult topics, by the time you're done, you will have gained all the knowledge from those 10 books. Naruto's skeptical look doesn't fade. Studying is still studying, he mumbles under his breath. But Ebisu doesn't stop. Think about it this way. You're used to using around 20 clones, right? With only 10 clones studying, that leaves you with 10 clones, and your real self, free to do whatever you want. You could use that extra time to train. He then turns his attention to Kakashi, who's been quietly watching from the side. Kakashi-sensei, didn't you mention having some jutsu scrolls that Naruto could work on? Quote. At the mention of new jutsu, Naruto's depression evaporates. He jumps up, looking back and forth between Kakashi and Ebisu, his eyes sparkling with renewed energy. Wait. So I don't have to sit there and read all the time myself. The clones do the studying. And I get to learn new jutsu. Ebisu nods with a satisfied smile. Precisely. While your clones are in the library, you could be outside training and working on your taijutsu, ninjutsu, or whatever you'd like. Quote. Naruto, now bouncing on his feet with excitement, punches the air. Okay, maybe I can get behind this idea. Naruto's celebratory mood falters as a thought crosses his mind. He pauses mid-punch and turns back to Ebisu with a confused expression. But, why do I even need to study? I get that my grades weren't exactly tip-top in the academy, but that doesn't matter anymore, right? Even in the written exam, they didn't actually care whether we knew the answers or not. It was just to test our information gathering abilities. Ebisu, catching Naruto's puzzled look, takes a deep breath before explaining. That's a good question, Naruto. The written exam was indeed more about your ability to gather information and strategize rather than your actual knowledge. But the finals are different. They're not just about fighting prowess, they also test your overall capability as a shinobi. Let me put it this way. Knowledge and understanding are crucial for any ninja. It's not just about physical strength or combat skills. When you face an opponent, knowing various strategies, understanding the properties of different jutsu, and being able to analyze and adapt quickly can make a huge difference. This is where studying comes in. Naruto listens intently as Ebisu continues. Think of it as adding more tools to your toolbox. The more you know, the more options you have during a fight. If you understand the fundamentals of various jutsu, tactics, and how different elements interact, you can me up with more effective counter strategies and exploit your opponent's weaknesses. Naruto's expression shifts from confusion to realization. He nods slowly, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fit together. So, it's not just about being strong, but about being smart and prepared for anything that comes up. Ebisu smiles, pleased with Naruto's grasp of the concept. Exactly. The more you know, the better you can handle unexpected situations. Studying might not seem as exciting as training or fighting, but it's a crucial part of becoming a well-rounded shinobi. And with the training me and Kakashi have planned, you'll be able to balance both studying and practical skills effectively. Quote, Naruto, finally seeing the bigger picture, gives a slow nod. He didn't like studying, but the idea of becoming a smarter, stronger ninja appealed to him. Especially when it meant beating Neji in the finals. And Kakashi's scrolls? Naruto asked with a grin, eager to get to the fun part. Kakashi steps forward, smiling beneath his mask. I've got a few jutsu in mind that will suit you perfectly, Naruto. As Naruto heads out with Ebisu, the combination of studying and training seems less daunting and more like an exciting opportunity to grow. With a clear goal in mind and a plan set in place, Naruto feels more determined than ever to train himself up for the upcoming finals. Konoha's hot springs. Naruto's excitement quickly fades as Ebisu leads him outside the Konoha hot springs. His brows furrow, and he immediately throws up his hands in protest. Oi, oi, oi. What's going on here, you perv? This isn't some training. You're just trying to peek, aren't you? Ebisu twitches, a noticeable tick mark forming on his forehead, but he maintains his composure. Naruto, he says in a low, measured voice, I am not a pervert. I've brought you here for a legitimate reason, and it has nothing to do with peeping. Naruto crosses his arms, not entirely convinced, his suspicious eyes darting between Ebisu and the hot springs. Sure. Quote, taking a calming breath, Ebisu continues, this is part of your practical training, something I believe you'll find very useful before we start on your study sessions. So if you could kindly stop accusing me of inappropriate behavior, I'd appreciate it. Quote, Naruto scratches the back of his head, clearly still dubious but also intrigued. The promise of learning something practical, something real, outside of just books, makes him relent. Alright, I'm sorry, Ebisu-sensei. I guess I may have jumped the gun a little, Naruto says with a grin, though his voice is laced with overly dramatic and insincere apology. Ebisu sighs, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose, not entirely convinced by Naruto's half-hearted attempt at politeness, but chooses to let it slide. Good. Now, follow me, and I'll show you why we're here. You're going to learn something important about chakra control. Naruto perks up at the mention of chakra control. His attention shifts away from his earlier suspicions and back to the task at hand, ready to see what Ebisu has in store for him. Ebisu stops in front of one of the onsen pools, the steam rising in soft wisps, and turns to Naruto with a confident smile. All right, Naruto. Today, you're going to learn something that will push your chakra control to the next level. Quote. Naruto's eyes light up with curiosity and excitement. Oh yeah, so, what are you gonna teach me? Ebisu gestures toward the steaming water. Water walking. Naruto's jaw drops, his eyes wide with anticipation. Ebisu nods, pleased with Naruto's enthusiasm. Kakashi informed me that he's already taught you the tree climbing exercise, correct? Naruto nods eagerly. Yeah, I nailed it after a few tries, even though it was tricky at first. Quote. Well, Ebisu continues, water walking is the next step. It's more difficult because, unlike a solid surface like a tree, water is constantly moving and shifting. You'll have to control your chakra in a much more precise manner. Quote. Naruto listens closely as Ebisu explains the differences. When you're tree walking, you channel your chakra into the soles of your feet, creating a bond with a solid surface. That bond, once you master it, remains constant as long as you maintain the right amount of chakra. Quote. Ebisu kneels beside the edge of the onsen pool, dipping a finger into the water. But water, as you can see, is always moving. It's fluid, unpredictable. You can't form a stable bond like you do with a tree. Instead, you need to constantly adjust the amount of chakra you release, staying balanced on top of a surface that's always changing. Naruto frowns, realizing the added complexity. So, I've gotta adjust the chakra in my feet the whole time. Quote. And you'll sink right in. The key is maintaining perfect control over your chakra flow, constantly adjusting and adapting to the water's movement beneath you. Naruto scratches his head, looking down at the pool. Sounds kinda tricky, but I think I can do it. Ebisu smiles. I have no doubt. With your improved chakra control from the tree climbing exercise, you already have a solid foundation. This is just the next logical step. Once you master this, your overall control will improve drastically. Naruto clenches his fists in determination, his mind already whirling with excitement. Alright, let's do this. Time to walk on water. Quote. Ebisu stands up and steps back, giving Naruto room to prepare. Whenever you're ready, Naruto. Focus, feel the flow of your chakra, and step lightly. Naruto nods, ready to take on this new challenge. Naruto gathers his chakra, concentrating as hard as he can on his feet like he did when he climbed trees, and steps forward onto the water with confidence. But the moment his foot touches the surface, he plunges straight through, his yelp of surprise echoing as he splashes into the steaming hot weight. Ebisu watches with a smirk tugging at his lips, arms crossed as Naruto flails. Just as I expected, he says to himself. Water walking is a much more difficult task than tree walking. Naruto bursts out of the water, gasping for air and scrambling to the edge. What the hell, Ebisu? This water's boiling me alive. He waves his arms frantically, steam rising off him as if he were a noodle being cooked. Ebisu lets out a small chuckle, adjusting his glasses as they glint in the sunlight. Ah, I forgot to mention, this water is over 60 degrees. The reason I chose this spot to train in is to force you to learn faster, by putting you under stress. And, well, it also keeps you from simply brute forcing your way through the lesson with your shadow clones. Quote. Naruto, still drenched and panting, stares at him incredulously. What? Why can't I use clones? I thought you said they were a great way to train faster. Ebisu's expression softens for a moment, as if he's remembering something fond. Oh, I still think they're useful, he replies, watching Naruto wring out his clothes. But this particular training is more about teaching you the value of hard work and dedication. Naruto raises an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I work hard. Ebisu smiles, recalling a memory from not too long ago. There was a time when young Konohamaru was training particularly hard. I, of course, believed it was due to my excellent teaching methods. But when I asked him about it, he told me something different. He said it was because you told him, there are no shortcuts to becoming Hokage. Naruto blinks in surprise, not expecting such words to come back to him. Ebisu continues, while your shadow clones are indeed a smart way to maximize your training, there's something to be said about putting yourself through the grind, the real, difficult work, without relying on tricks. This water, as you've already noticed, will prevent you from simply overwhelming the problem with numbers. You'll need to feel the chakra yourself, master it through your own effort. Naruto, still a little frustrated, huffs but listens intently. So you're saying, even if I'm using clones, I still need to put in max effort, huh? Exactly, Ebisu says, nodding. The harder you work, the more determined your clones will be. They are a reflection of your own resolve. If you take this training seriously, they'll take it seriously too. Remember, Naruto, there's no shortcut to real strength. Naruto nods. I guess I've been a bit reliant on the fact that I can learn anything quickly with my clones, so that means my clones will only be working as hard as I am. Quote. Precisely. Ebisu agrees. Now, how about you try again? Naruto looks at the steaming water and nods, his resolve hardening. Naruto stepped onto the water once again, wobbling as he tried to balance his chakra. His face twisted in concentration, but this time, he managed to stay afloat for a moment longer before falling back into the water. Determined, he tried once more, and this time, his feet remained on the surface for a few seconds. Ebisu, observing from the side, smiled, impressed by how quickly Naruto was grasping the technique. Well done, Naruto. You're learning faster than I expected, Ebisu said, a rare note of praise in his voice. But before he could continue, Naruto's eyes widened in shock, and he pointed behind Ebisu, his mouth agape. Hey, what the? Look behind you. Naruto shouted, but in doing this, he lost his concentration and splashed into the water again. Confused, Ebisu turned to see what Naruto was pointing at. His face instantly morphed into a mask of anger. Standing there, casually peeking over the wall into the women's bath, was a tall man with wild, spiky white hair that flowed down his back. His red robe stood out vividly against his dark green vest, and a massive scroll was strapped to his back. His face, marked with red lines running down his cheeks, had an oddly carefree expression as he watched the steam rise from the other side of the bathhouse wall. Ebisu clenched his fists, his glasses gleaming furiously. How dare you engage in such indecent behavior? He shouted, launching himself at the man without hesitation. I will not tolerate this perversion. Quote. But before Ebisu could land a hit, the white-haired man raised his hand, barely sparing a glance in Ebisu's direction. With a simple, fluid motion, he deflected Ebisu's strike effortlessly, sending the special Jonin flying backward with a light tap to his chest. Ebisu hit the ground hard, knocked out cold in an instant. Naruto, who had just clambered back onto the shore, stared in disbelief. His jaw dropped as he watched the white-haired man brush off Ebisu's attack like it was nothing. What the? Naruto muttered, still soaking wet. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. Sure, Ebisu wasn't the strongest guy around, but to be taken out with so little effort, this guy was on a whole different level. Naruto's mind raced as he stood there, his eyes wide in awe. This guy, he's gotta be as strong as Kakashi-sensei. Who the hell is he? Naruto, his curiosity piqued, watched as the mysterious man continued his casual perusal of the women's bath, completely unfazed by Ebisu's attack or Naruto's pre-sense. The mystery surrounding him only deepened. Naruto glanced down at Ebisu, who was sprawled on the ground, completely unconscious. Man, that guy's out cold, he muttered, scratching his head in disbelief. Without wasting time, Naruto formed the familiar hand seal for a shadow clone, creating a duplicate to keep an eye on the fallen Ebisu. The real Naruto, however, had other plans. He turned and walked straight toward the white-haired man, determination in his step. Oi, Naruto called out, glaring at the man. Who the heck are you? You knocked out the guy who was supposed to be training me. You owe me for that, old man. The white-haired stranger glanced lazily over his shoulder, unimpressed by Naruto's demand. With a smirk, he replied, training you. That guy got in the way of my research, brat. Research? Naruto repeated, his confusion deepening. What kind of research are you talking about? What? Are you a scientist or something? Quote. The man chuckled and puffed up his chest proudly. Not exactly, kid. I'm a writer. A renowned one, at that. He fished out a small, worn-out book from his robe and waved it in front of Naruto's face. The cover read Make Out Paradise, and it looked all too familiar. Naruto's eyes widened in instant recognition. Hey, wait a minute, that's the same book Kakashi-sensei is always reading. That's right, the man declared, grinning with pride. I'm the author of the best-selling adult novel series in the shinobi world. My research is essential for my next masterpiece. Naruto's face immediately twisted in disgust as the realization sank in. So you're just a huge pervert. He yelled, pointing an accusing finger at the man. You're not doing research, you're just being a creep. The white-haired man's expression didn't falter. Pervy. Watch your mouth, kid. I'm an artist. And besides, what would a brat like you understand about the finer things in life, huh? Artist. Finer things. Naruto snapped back, his voice rising. You're just a shameless old man who peeks into the women's bath. How can you go around acting all proud of yourself for being a pervert? You're worse than Kakashi-sensei. The two of them continued to bicker, Naruto fuming while the man simply shrugged off every accusation with a casual wave of his hand, clearly unbothered by Naruto's insults. For all his confidence and shamelessness, Naruto couldn't help but wonder just who this guy was, and how someone so strong could be such a complete weirdo. Naruto, growing more irritated by the minute, decided to cut through all the man's excuses. He clenched his fists and glared at him. Listen, I don't care about your dumb excuses or research, or whatever. You knocked out my trainer, so what are you gonna do about my training, huh? The man raised an eyebrow and scratched his chin, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Training, you say? He looked over to the hot spring and then back at Naruto, his eyes glinting with sudden understanding. Ah, you mean the water walking exercise? Yeah, that's right. Naruto shot back, crossing his arms. Ebisu-sensei was supposed to teach me, but you knocked him out cold. So now it's your job to make sure I get the hang of it. The white-haired man let out a hearty laugh, clearly amused by Naruto's stubbornness. Ha, you've got some guts, kid. Alright, I suppose I could supervise your training. But only if you prove to me you're worth my time, he said with a challenging glint in his eye. Naruto blinked, momentarily taken aback. Worth your time? What's that supposed to mean? I don't need to prove anything to a pervert like you. He yelled, though a small part of him was intrigued. This man had taken out Ebisu in an instant, maybe he really was strong enough to be a decent teacher. Then consider it a test, the man replied, smirking. If you can manage to show some progress in your water walking by the end of the day, I'll teach you something worthwhile. Deal. He folded his arms across his chest, clearly expecting Naruto to back down. But Naruto grinned fiercely. Fine. I don't back down from a challenge, old man. I'll show you exactly what I'm made of. Naruto stepped onto the water again, his feet sinking slightly. Jiraiya observed him closely, seeing the boy struggle. Naruto's face twisted in concentration, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he focused all his attention on keeping his balance. Yet, frustration began to bubble within him. Why isn't this working? He yelled out, his voice echoing across the hot spring. I know I've gotten better at chakra control. I can feel my chakra moving exactly where it should be, but it's like it's not listening to me. His anger got the better of him, causing his concentration to falter. A second later, He splashed into the water. Naruto surfaced, sputtering, and pushed his soaked hair out of his eyes. Alright, that's it, he grumbled, stomping out of the water. He began throwing off his clothes, leaving on only his boxer shorts. No point in staying in these if I'm just gonna keep falling in. He huffed. He muttered to himself as he discarded his wet clothes, his irritation palpable. Why can't I get this stupid exercise right? What am I missing here? Jiraiya watched quietly, his eyes narrowing as he noted Naruto's agitation. He decided it was time to step in. Hey, kid, hold on a second, Jiraiya called out, drawing Naruto's attention. Do me a favor and focus your chakra for me. Naruto blinked in confusion. Huh, why? He asked skeptically. Just do it, Jiraiya insisted, waving a hand dismissively. I want to check something. Still unsure, Naruto complied, forming the required hand seal and channeling chakra throughout his body. As he did, a seal pattern appeared on his stomach, the 8 trigram seal. Jiraiya leaned in closer, inspecting it with a keen eye. His gaze turned sharp as he noticed another mark overlaying the original seal, a 5-pronged seal, crudely placed on top of the elegant work done by the 4th H. Hokage. Jiraiya frowned. So that's it. That snake Orochimaru must have been up to something, he muttered to himself, recognizing the interference caused by the 5-pronged seal. Alright, kid, raise your arms, Jiraiya ordered suddenly. Why? Naruto questioned, his suspicion clear. But he raised his arms anyway, too curious to object further. This better not be another one of your stupid. Bam! Jiraiya's hand slammed into Naruto's stomach, directly over the seal. His fingers pressed into the pattern as he channeled his own chakra to undo the 5-pronged seal. Naruto gasped, staggering back with wide eyes. Ow! What the hell was that for, you crazy pervert? He shouted, clutching his stomach. He glared at Jiraiya, who remained as carefree as ever. Just stimulating some relaxation points for you, Jiraiya replied nonchalantly, waving off Naruto's outburst. Now quit whining and go try walking on the water again. Quote. Naruto shot him a skeptical look but turned back to the water with a grumble. Fine, whatever. But if this doesn't work, I'm coming back to kick your. He cut himself off, focusing on the task at hand. As he stepped onto the water, a sense of balance and control washed over him. He wasn't wobbling, slipping, or struggling to maintain his footing. In fact, it was almost easy. Whoa! Naruto exclaimed, eyes wide with surprise. I did it. I'm actually standing on the water. He took a few experimental steps, moving with newfound confidence. It's like my chakra's finally listening to me again. Jiraiya smirked, his thoughts now turning to the next phase of Naruto's training. Good. That's one obstacle out of the way. But now comes the real challenge, he mused to himself, crossing his arms. It's time Naruto learns how to control the fox's chakra. But first, I need to figure out how much he knows about it. Single quote. Jiraiya leaned forward, his eyes focused on Naruto with a hint of seriousness. Have you ever noticed a second type of chakra in your body? One that feels different from your normal chakra? He asked, his tone calm but probing. Naruto furrowed his brow, thinking back. After a moment, he nodded slowly. Yeah, now that you mention it, there have been times when I've felt this huge rush of chakra. It feels way different than my usual chakra. He paused, trying to find the right words to describe it. If I had to explain it, my normal chakra feels blue, but this other chakra, it's red. It's different, stronger, but kind of wild too. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed, a knowing look crossing his face. That red chakra, it belongs to the 9 tails sealed inside you. The more intense and overwhelming feeling is because it's the fox's chakra. You've been tapping into it without realizing it. Naruto's eyes widened. Wait, so that power I felt during the fight with Haku, that was the 9 tails chakra? Jiraiya nodded, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Exactly. The fox's chakra is immense, far beyond your normal reserves. But that power comes with a cost, Naruto. If you don't learn to control it, it could easily overwhelm you, or worse, you could end up hurting your allies. Naruto's eyes widened, absorbing the gravity of Jiraiya's words. He could feel a mix of anxiety and determination bubbling up within him. Controlling this power was clearly no small task, and the risks involved were enough to make his stomach twist. But he knew he had to master it, not just for himself but for his friends and his dreams. Jiraiya crossed his arms, studying Naruto's expression for a moment before continuing. "You've already shown me you've got some decent chakra control," he admitted. "So, we're going to work on something a little more advanced tomorrow." With that, he bent down and hoisted the unconscious Ebisu onto his shoulder. "Meet me here tomorrow morning," Jiraiya ordered, his tone leaving little room for argument. "I'll take this guy to where I'm staying and let him recover." Without waiting for a response, he turned and began walking away, leaving Naruto standing on the water's surface, deep in thought. Jiraiya's hotel room. Jiraiya's hotel room was modest but comfortable, a small table and a few chairs scattered around with a window that overlooked a quiet street. Jiraiya had just settled Ebisu on one of the chairs, the special Jonin now slowly coming to his senses. Rubbing his throbbing head, Ebisu blinked in confusion before noticing Jiraiya standing over him, a glass of water in hand. Jiraiya extended the glass, offering it with a sheepish grin. "Sorry about that, I didn't mean to hit you so hard," he said, a note of genuine apology in his voice. Ebisu, now fully aware of who was in front of him, quickly scrambled to his feet, his face a mask of both embarrassment and respect. "Lord Jiraiya, I didn't realize it was you. My apologies for my earlier behavior. I'm surprised to see you in the village. The Hokage had asked us to locate you, but we couldn't find any trace of you." Quote. Jiraiya chuckled, shaking his head. "Ah, well, I've been around, just keeping a low profile. There's actually something else I need to apologize for." Ebisu looked puzzled, but Jiraiya's grin only grew wider. "I'm actually stealing one of your students. I've decided I want to teach Naruto how to access his special chakra." Ebisu's eyes widened in shock. "Stealing my pupil? But of course, if it's for the sake of his growth, I can't object. However, I would request that I still be able to conduct the study sessions with him." Jiraiya's eyebrows knitted together in confusion. "I'm not sure how that would work. I'll likely be with Naruto most of the day, and he'd be exhausted by the end of it." Quote. Ebisu's face broke into a smile, sensing Jiraiya's hesitation. "Actually, there's no need for you to worry about that. Naruto wouldn't have to be present during his study sessions. Naruto has developed a unique training method using shadow clones to accelerate his learning." Quote. Jiraiya's confusion deepened. "Shadow clones? How does that help?" Ebisu's smile widened. "Actually, there's no need for him to be there. Naruto has developed a unique training method using his shadow clones. He's been applying the memory transfer ability of the clones to learn skills much faster." Jiraiya's eyebrows raised in interest. "Memory transfer, you say? How does that work exactly?" Ebisu continues, his excitement evident. "Naruto creates a large number of shadow clones and has them engage in various training activities. The skills and knowledge they acquire are transferred back to him when the clones dispel. This method allows him to rapidly improve his abilities." Quote. Jiraiya's eyes twinkled with amusement as he considered the implications. "Impressive. The kid certainly got a knack for innovation." He leaned back with a relaxed smile. "That's settled then. I'm perfectly okay with you handling Naruto's study sessions with his clones. Just make sure they only read one book per dispel and that they take at least 5 minutes between each other. Too much information at once might overwhelm him and give him headaches." Ebisu's eyes widened slightly as he processed the advice. He scratched the back of his head, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. "Ah, I hadn't really considered that. Thanks for the tip." Jiraiya let out a hearty laugh, clearly entertained by Ebisu's flustered reaction. "Well, it's always good to have a plan. Better safe than sorry, right? After a few minutes of casual conversation and laughter, Ebisu rose from his seat. I'm sorry for keeping you, Jiraiya. I'll leave you to your evening. Have a good night. Jiraiya waved him off with a friendly gesture. No problem at all. Have a good night yourself, Ebisu. Ebisu nodded in understanding. That sounds like a good idea. It'll definitely help him out. Quote, as Ebisu stepped out of the hotel, he began to walk back toward his home. His mind was already working on the preparations for Naruto's study sessions. He considered which books would be most beneficial for Naruto's training, mulling over various options as he made his way through the quiet streets of Konoha. His thoughts buzzed with plans and ideas, eager to set up a productive learning environment for the energetic young ninja. Meanwhile, back in his room, Jiraiya contemplated the new arrangement. He nodded to himself, pleased with the decision. I'll definitely adjust my own training approach to complement this new method, he muttered, already envisioning how he could optimize Naruto's training with his unique shadow clone technique. The next morning, Naruto's apartment. Naruto woke up with an extra pep in his step, buzzing with excitement about the day ahead. Sure, both of his new teachers were perverts, but each had something to offer that would help him grow stronger. Ebisu would provide him with the knowledge and intellect he needed to become a more well-rounded ninja, while Jiraiya would teach him how to harness and utilize the Nine Tails chakra. Naruto quickly got himself ready, making sure to wolf down a hearty breakfast in preparation for the intense training he knew he'd be enduring. He couldn't afford to run out of energy halfway through the day, not when so much was at stake. Once he was dressed and ready, Naruto headed toward the balcony of his apartment. He grinned, already brimming with anticipation, and formed the hand seal for his shadow clone jutsu. In a puff of smoke, 10 identical Narutos appeared around him. All right, you guys know the drill, he announced with a grin. Head to the library. Ebisu-sensei said he'd be waiting outside for you. The clones saluted in unison, each shouting, yes, boss. Before leaping off the balcony, they began hopping from rooftop to rooftop, making their way to the library with a sense of purpose. Naruto watched them go, his grin widening as he wiped a mock tear from his eye. They grow up so fast, he joked to himself. Their first day of school. He snickered at his own humor, feeling the excitement bubble up inside him. Today marked the start of his path to becoming stronger, smarter, and ultimately victorious against Neji. With his clones now off on their assignment, Naruto turned toward his own destination. Taking a deep breath, he launched himself from the balcony, his body light and agile as he began bounding towards the hot springs where Jiraiya had told him to meet up. His mind raced with possibilities of what the day might hold, his heart pounding with the thrill of the unknown challenges ahead. This was it. His real training was about to begin. With Naruto. Naruto stood there, his arms crossed and an unimpressed look plastered on his face as Jiraiya began his speech. The old sage was going on about how he'd be teaching Naruto for the month ahead, his words drifting lazily out while his eyes remained fixated on something far less appropriate. Hidden behind a bush, Jiraiya peered through at a group of bikini-clad women playing around near a waterfall, his expression one of blissful contentment. Naruto's eyebrow twitched in irritation. Seriously, pervy sage, could you at least try to act like a somewhat decent sensei? Jiraiya sighed heavily, reluctantly tearing his gaze away from the scene to face Naruto. The look on the young ninja's face made it clear he wasn't amused. Folding his arms, Jiraiya squared up in front of him, his demeanor turning slightly more serious. All right, Jiraiya muttered, scratching the back of his head. Down to business. He looked Naruto in the eye, his expression becoming more focused. Do you remember what we talked about yesterday? About the 2 different types of chakra you hold within you? Naruto's annoyance faded slightly as he recalled their conversation. He gave a nod, ready to find out what this training would actually entail. Jiraiya nodded, satisfied that Naruto was ready to listen, you said that you felt that red chakra at the same time you exerted an enormous amount of strength, correct? Naruto furrowed his brow as he thought back to the times he had experienced that strange surge of power. The memories hit him in flashes. First, on the bridge in the Land of Waves, when he thought Sasuke had been killed by Haku. That overwhelming rage and despair had brought forth a wellspring of strength he didn't know he had. The second time was in the Forest of Death during the Chunin exams, when his team was attacked by Orochimaru. The fear, the anger, it had all come together, and the red chakra had poured out of him like a flood. Naruto nodded at Jiraiya's question. Yeah, I felt really strong, he admitted, clenching his fists as he remembered those moments. Jiraiya's demeanor shifted, becoming more serious. Good, he said sternly, now I want you to try to feel that red chakra again. Quote. Naruto let out a sigh, a mix of skepticism and uncertainty clouding his face. I dunno if it'll work, but I'll give it a shot, he replied. Taking a deep breath, he formed the seal of confrontation and began focusing on his chakra. His expression turned focused, his brow furrowing in concentration as he searched inward. Jiraiya stood silently, observing the young ninja. He mused internally about Naruto's progress. If he hadn't came up with that shadow clone training method, his chakra control would probably be abysmal. But he had seen Naruto's current level of control, and while it wasn't perfect, it was far better than he had hoped for at this stage. Jiraiya knew that Naruto wasn't ready to use the Nine Tails chakra just yet, but that wasn't the point. All he needs to do is sense its presence, Jiraiya thought. Everything else will come with training. Jiraiya broke the silence, coaching Naruto with a calm, steady tone. Keep your chakra calm and focused. The other one will stand out, it's more aggressive and wild. Naruto's only response was a slow, deep breath, his eyes closed as he tried to follow Jiraiya's instructions. Minutes passed, the air around them still intense. Naruto's face finally showed a slight shift, though he remained silent. Jiraiya watched intently, his eyes narrowing. Did he actually find it? He wondered, his heart beating a bit faster at the possibility. Inside his own mind, Naruto felt himself drifting into a state of tranquility he had never experienced before. It was oddly peaceful, almost enlightening. Not the time for that, he reminded himself, pushing aside the feeling. He needed to find that second chakra Jiraiya had spoken of. And then, he felt it. His chakra flowed calmly, a constant, soothing stream, but there, buried deeper within, was something else. It was different, out of place. It felt wild, aggressive, like a caged animal hiding in the shadows. He tried to grasp at it, to focus on the unfamiliar chakra, but the more he tried, the more it slipped away. Frustration began to creep in, causing his own chakra to grow agitated. Just like that, the sensation was gone. Naruto opened his eyes, a scowl on his face as he cursed under his breath. He sighed deeply, meeting Jiraiya's expectant gaze. I noticed it, but I couldn't focus on it enough, he grumbled, irritation lacing his words. Maybe we should just train something else. Jiraiya was taken aback for a moment. He actually sensed it, he thought, quickly waving off Naruto's suggestion. No way, Jiraiya replied, his voice firm. The fact that you could distinguish that chakra at all is a huge step. We can't just move on to something else now. Jiraiya's expression softened slightly as he continued. Ebisu told me about your shadow clone training method, and now it's time to put it to good use. Naruto's irritation faded, replaced with a puzzled but eager look. Hearing Jiraiya acknowledge his progress sent a surge of pride through him, and he listened closely, ready for what was to come. With a wide smile mirroring Jiraiya's, Naruto formed the seal and summoned 10 clones. They appeared around him, all grinning in anticipation. All right, Naruto exclaimed. What's next, Jiraiya-sensei? With the study group, one of Naruto's clones sat cross-legged on the floor of the library, a book on basic chakra theory open in his lap. He let out an exaggerated yawn, his eyes drooping with boredom. Beside him, Ebisu sat quietly, observing the clone's obvious disinterest. Deciding to approach the situation with patience, Ebisu calmly asked, Naruto, why do you seem so uninterested in this material? Quote. The clone blinked, caught off guard. He had fully expected Ebisu to start yelling at him for not paying attention. Instead, the man seemed genuinely curious about how he felt. Hesitating for a moment, Naruto scratched the back of his head before answering, I get that the more I know, the more it'll help me in fights or whatever, but I already know about chakra, right? My control's pretty decent now. So what's the point of reading all this boring stuff? Ebisu nodded, his expression thoughtful as he considered Naruto's words. Fair enough, he said calmly. Would you be willing to hear my explanation for why learning this is so important? The clone shifted slightly, eyeing Ebisu with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Fine, I guess, he muttered. Ebisu offered a small smile before launching into his explanation. You're right in saying that you know how to use chakra. You can mold it, control it, and use techniques with it. But there's a difference between simply knowing how to use chakra and truly understanding it. Quote. Naruto tilted his head, giving Ebisu his full attention. What do you mean by that? He asked, genuinely curious now. Think of it this way, Ebisu began, his tone instructive but not condescending. Let's say you know how to light a fire. You can rub two sticks together or strike a match to get it going. That's knowledge. But understanding fire means knowing how it spreads, what fuels it, how to control its intensity, and how to extinguish it when necessary. Chakra is very similar. Knowing how to use it is like knowing how to start a fire, but understanding it allows you to control it with precision, efficiency, and flexibility. The clone furrowed his brows, starting to see Ebisu's point, but he still wasn't fully convinced. Okay, but how does that help me in a fight? I can already do stuff like water walking and the shadow clone jutsu. Ah, I'm glad you asked, Ebisu replied, a hint of excitement in his voice as he saw Naruto's interest growing. Let's consider chakra control techniques, for example. Right now, you're using chakra to perform basic tasks like walking on water or creating clones. But if you understand why certain amounts of chakra are needed and how it flows within your body, you can refine those techniques. This means less wasted energy, quicker recovery times, and even the ability to execute more advanced jutsu with less effort. Ebisu leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the clones. You see, Naruto, basic chakra theory isn't just about learning what chakra is. It's about learning how to maximize its potential. Understanding the nature of chakra means you can adapt to new situations on the fly. You'll be able to pick up new techniques faster because you won't just be memorizing steps, you'll be understanding the principles behind them. Quote. The clone's eyes widened as he began to grasp the practical application of what Ebisu was saying. So, if I understand chakra better, I can get stronger, faster? He asked, his voice now tinged with a mix of curiosity and determination. Exactly, Ebisu confirmed, nodding. Think of it like this. If you fully understand chakra, you can even develop your own techniques. You're not just a ninja following a manual, you're an innovator creating new paths in battle. That's why learning the theory behind chakra is crucial. It's not just for bookworms, it's for any ninja who wants to truly master their power. Naruto's clone slowly nodded, his previous reluctance replaced with a spark of interest. Okay, he said, determination shining in his eyes. Ebisu chuckled, patting the clone on the back, glad to see Naruto's mindset shifting. And trust me, if you put in the effort to understand this, the cool jutsu will come much more easily than you think. Quote. The clone grinned, diving back into the book with a newfound focus. Ebisu glanced over at the other clones. His eyes widened in mild surprise as he saw that they had all shifted their attention toward him, clearly intrigued by the conversation he was having with the first clone. It seemed that the lecture on chakra theory had sparked a wave of curiosity among them. With a bemused smile, Ebisu decided to address the group. So, it looks like you all are interested in this book now. Was anyone else finding their current reading material a bit boring? Every single clone's hand shot up in an instant, each one looking both guilty and eager. Ebisu blinked, clearly taken aback by the unanimous response. He let out a deep, weary sigh as he realized the extent of his challenge. Ebisu muttered to himself, maybe I should have asked for a smaller study group. With a renewed sense of purpose, Ebisu continued to guide the clones through their reading, making sure each explanation was as informative and engaging as possible. If nothing else, he was learning that with Naruto's innovative training methods, adaptability was key, both for the student and the teacher. Back with Naruto and Jiraiya, Naruto's sweat glistened under the sun as he pushed through his intense training regimen. He sprinted around the clearing, his breaths coming in labored gasps. With a determined grimace, he dropped to the ground, his hands gripping the earth as he pounded out push-ups, followed by a set of sit-ups. The relentless cycle of exercise left him exhausted, and he finally slumped onto his backside, panting heavily. Jiraiya approached with a bottle of water, tossing it to Naruto, who grabbed it and chugged it eagerly. As Naruto took a moment to catch his breath, he cast a glance past the clearing towards his clones. Each clone was stationed at varying distances, engaged in different chakra control exercises. Some were standing on the water's surface, others were clinging to trees. What caught Naruto's eye, though, was that all the clones were also meditating, sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed, focused on their chakra. Curious and slightly bewildered, Naruto turned to Jiraiya. Hey, why are my clones doing that? Jiraiya grinned as he explained, while you were focusing on your chakra earlier, you probably felt quite calm, right? That sense of peace and awareness. Naruto nodded, recalling the serene feeling he'd experienced. Yeah, I felt really peaceful. Jiraiya continued, what you were feeling is akin to the state you reach when meditating, a deep calm and awareness of your body and surroundings. Naruto's eyes widened with realization. So you're saying my clones are meditating to help me sense the Nine Tails chakra? Jiraiya nodded, that's part of it. But there's more to it. While meditating will help you sense the Nine Tails chakra easier, the ultimate goal is for your clones and you by proxy to be able to enter a meditative state at will. This state will help you maintain a calm mind and steady chakra flow. Naruto's face lit up with understanding. But why are they doing control exercises while meditating? Jiraiya explained further, achieving a meditative state is one thing, but being able to maintain that state while being active is even more valuable. By having your clones perform chakra control exercises while meditating, they're learning to keep their mind clear and their chakra steady even whilst putting their mind and body under a constant strain. Quote, Naruto looked back at his clones, noting their struggles. Some were sinking into the water, while others slipped from their trees. Most had expressions of frustration, clearly finding it challenging to balance meditation with the chakra control exercises. It looks like they're having a tough time, Naruto observed. Jiraiya chuckled, yes, it's not easy. But overcoming this challenge will make them, and you, much stronger. It's about pushing past the difficulties and mastering control over your mind and body. Quote, and what about me? Why am I just doing physical exercise? Jiraiya regarded Naruto with a thoughtful expression. Come on, Naruto. You can't expect everyone to just spell everything out for you. Why don't you think about it and tell me what you come up with? Quote, Naruto scowled, frustration evident on his face. He glanced over at his clones again, trying to steady his thoughts. He needed to stay calm and focus. Naruto pondered the question, evaluating his current situation. His strength and speed weren't bad but could use improvement, though that didn't seem to be the core of the issue. The realization hit him suddenly. He slapped his forehead in a moment of epiphany. Sorry, I should have figured this out sooner. Naruto exclaimed. Jiraiya's eyes softened into a smile. So, you understand now. Naruto looked up at Jiraiya with renewed determination. Yeah, I get it now. While my clones can help me with learning techniques and transferring knowledge, they can't train my body for me. To get stronger in terms of speed, strength, and stamina, I need to put in the work myself. So, I have to train my body myself. Jiraiya nodded in approval. Exactly. It's about building your base capabilities. The clones can't replace the need for your own physical training. With a burst of energy, Naruto jumped up and shouted, "Well, that's it then. I'm not gonna let my clones outdo me. I'm gonna make myself 10 times stronger. By the time they finish their meditating, I'll be as big as Choji but in pure muscle." Naruto immediately threw himself back into his drills, pushing his body to its limits with an infectious enthusiasm. He was completely absorbed in his training, oblivious to the reactions his outburst had elicited. Jiraiya watched with a bemused expression as Naruto threw himself into his routine. Meanwhile, Naruto's clones, having heard his shout, looked up from their meditations. The clones exchanged glances of annoyance at being interrupted from their meditation. Though the annoyance was quickly replaced with determination. Each clone, fueled by Naruto's fervor, adopted a renewed sense of purpose. They were determined not to be outdone by their creator, each returning to their own training with more focus than ever before. The scene was set. Naruto and his clones, each driven by their own goals, pushed forward with unyielding resolve.